Death Penalty Focus is the largest grassroots anti-death penalty organization in the United States with some 100,000 members and supporters. And we are a very proud partner in the Yes on 34 Safe California campaign. I want to reinforce the message that if you don't vote, you're giving away your voice. If you don't vote, you are fulfilling somebody else's agenda for you. And if you don't vote, you don't get to complain about what happens. So if you want to have a voice in how your money is spent, how your lives are run, and if you want to be able to complain about it afterwards, please vote on November 6th. If you're not registered to vote, you can register here at this table or with any of the people walking around with voter registration clipboards like Catherine over here on my right, your left. Tomorrow is the deadline for registration. If you fill out a registration form here tonight, Catherine will take it personally to the registrar's office and make sure that you are registered to vote on November 6th. About Proposition 34, Yes on the Yes on 34 campaign, I have a couple of messages for you. To be sure that the great state of California and its 37 million people never execute an innocent person, to save $1 billion, that's $1 billion of our money over the next 5 years, to put more of our money into keeping us all safe. I've just come back from Europe where I met with the International Commission Against the Death Penalty, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France, and the Council of Europe. And I want you to know that the world is watching California. They're watching what we do because California matters to the rest of the world. The world is supporting our effort to be safer and to save money and to save innocent lives by ending the dysfunctional death penalty in the state with the 8th largest economy on the globe.
I'm here to talk to you about bringing a little justice back to the justice system, and we can do that by voting yes on 34. I'm also here to put a human face, closer? Okay, on the tragedy of wrongful conviction, wrongful imprisonment, people on death row who didn't commit the crimes, and everything else that is wrong with the criminal justice system today. It isn't just the money, although that's a huge part of it. It's about the fact that we get it wrong so much, and also 46% of all homicides in California go unsolved. 56% of all rapes go unsolved. A rape is a serial crime. Rapists do not stop until they are caught. If we devote more money to catching these rapists and putting them in prison, we'll not only save millions and millions of dollars, but we will also save the lives of the victims who are oftentimes destroyed by that tragedy. I spent 17 and a half years in prison for a crime I didn't commit. The only reason that I did not get the death penalty was because there was a California Supreme Court decision that took my case out from under the death penalty. And she told you a little bit about it, but let me explain how it works. When I was arrested the first time, I hired the best lawyer in Northern California, and after 4.5 months, the case against me was thrown out because there was no evidence against me. But one of the great things that we do in our criminal justice system is we use snitches. We use people to turn them in order to solve cases. We do it all the time. And what happens is you get a lot of situations like mine. Because after Gary Massey was convicted, that was when he contacted the district attorney's office and said, I can help you. It isn't just that he agreed to testify against me. It's the fact that they helped him create this story. They not only helped him create a story, they let him visit his children. They let him have sex with his wife. They took him out to dinner. One time they even let him play with their guns. They did every single thing they could to convince this man that he was their friend and that all he had to do was go along with the program, tell the story, testify against me, and instead of serving a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, he would instead serve a much shorter sentence. They indicated he'd probably be out in 12 and a half years. That was what he thought that he would get if he was resentenced to 25 years to life. So he did, and they helped him do it. And so they rearrested me. Another thing that's wrong with the criminal justice system, I'd spent every single dime that I had on my first arrest and a great attorney. And it is a very, very expensive system. One of the reasons it costs so much is because there is so much going on behind the scenes. So I had to have an attorney appointed for me, and he was just good enough to get me convicted. But it happens all the time. People make deals, they use their snitches, they do whatever they can do. In my case, the prosecutor knew all about it. He's the one who helped him come up with this story. But yet my prosecutor stood up in court and said, Gary Massey has no reason to lie. He just wants to clear his conscience. Interesting that he'd suddenly developed a conscience, but I guess that's another story. He said that there was no deal, there was nothing in place. The DA had already signed a letter of agreement, which promised that Gary Massey would be resentenced to 25 years to life. And he took that letter and he put it in another file in another courtroom with another case so that we couldn't find it. And we didn't find it. And then after I was convicted, the district attorney stood up and said, well, Gloria Killian's, I don't think she's ever been arrested at all. As far as I know, she's never gotten a traffic ticket. She was in law school, so she should get more time than anybody else, including the perpetrator. And I did. And so I was sentenced to 32 years to life, of which I served 17 and a half. But my case actually went on for 22 years. At the end of 25 years, actually was the best part, but that does come a little bit later. After I got the evidence, my friends hired lawyers. They did everything they could. They fought my case all the way to the United States Supreme Court. When the Ninth Circuit overturned my case, it was wonderful. It was in the LA Times. Everybody was all excited, and I couldn't get out of prison, which really did nothing for my sunny attitude, to put it mildly. But they did everything they could do to harass me. And people often don't realize that that's another flaw in the criminal justice system, because we use it to harass people. We use it to force people to make deals and to do all kinds of things that they wouldn't do normally. So finally, I was released, and I'm here to try to remind you that these are human beings that this happens to. 141 people have been exonerated off of death row. If the law hadn't changed in California, I would have been on death row myself. The good thing about my sentence was that I was still alive to be exonerated. Life without the possibility of parole is the worst possible sentence that you can give somebody. Witness my own case. Gary Massey would do anything, say anything, commit any act in order to get out from underneath that sentence. It truly is a horrible, horrible punishment. And since it's so much cheaper, and the people that are sentenced to life without the possibility of parole instead of death can work, they can pay restitution to the victims, and they can stop costing us millions and millions and millions of dollars, because life without the possibility of parole is a really terrible sentence. And we can use the money that we save to solve more homicides, more rapes, put more cops on the street, so that we can have a safer community. That's why it's called Safe California. So please vote yes on Safe California, Proposition 34.
Everything she said was true about the justice system and how flawed it is, and it's broken. My interest in this issue and why I'm supporting Prop 34 and why it's so important to the state comes from my experience in working on cases of innocence. And these are cases of factual innocence. Our organization, the California Innocence Project, has been fortunate to free 10 wrongfully convicted persons since 2003. Thank you. 3 of these inmates served over 20 years for crimes they did not commit. One of these men, Tim Atkins, not only is a client, but I consider him a friend. And I know there's a lot of young persons out there, and you may be able to understand what he went through. Tim Atkins was 17 years old when he was arrested for a crime. He wasn't charged with the death penalty, but he very well could have, because it was a carjacking murder. We worked on his case. We found out that the eyewitness identification was horrible. The main witness said she saw him for 1 second, yet was able to identify him. There was another witness who said that Tim confessed to her that he committed the crime. Once we uncovered all the evidence showing that the witness was wrong, once we uncovered evidence showing who really committed the crime, once we uncovered evidence showing that that witness had lied, it was 23 years later. Tim Atkins went to prison when he was 17. He got out of prison when he was 40 years old. That is an eternity. And if he had been charged with the death penalty, if he had been executed before we could have found the evidence to release him, California would have an innocent man having been executed. And everyone says, well, how can an innocent man ever be executed? It's happened before. It's happened in other states. And everyone asks me, well, where's your proof for California? My answer is, are we going to wait until an innocent man is executed before we take a look at the death penalty system? That's something I don't think what we want to do. We want to look at the system. It's flawed, it's broken, it needs to be fixed. And it just reminds me, you know, whenever something happens, there's always a commission, there's always an investigation, something always stops. And I was just reminded a few weeks ago, American Airlines, some of their seats were coming loose. You know, unbolted from the floor and, you know, moving around. What does American Airlines do? They shut down all their flights because some seats are coming loose. We are risking sending innocent men to prison to be executed. We are wasting resources that can be used to solve crimes. We are spending money that we don't have. And what does the state of California do? They do nothing. And that's why I'm happy to see everyone here, because you can do something. I'm reminded that from the United States Supreme Court, Justice Antonin Scalia once wrote in his opinion something to the effect of, if there was an innocent man who's been executed, if there's an innocent man who was executed, people would be shouting it from the rooftops. Well, I challenge you to say, let's tell Scalia we are shouting it from the rooftops. We are going to do this. We're going to fix our broken system. We're going to replace the death penalty with life in prison without possibility of parole. We will vote yes on 34, and we will get it passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And it's such a great opportunity to participate in the campaign. Yesterday, I was at the Taste of Soul event down in L.A., which has become like the largest African-American event in the city. 300,000 people. I was there with a gang of volunteers, and we were passing out Yes on 34 flyers and everything, and engaging people in conversation. And it really warmed my heart to hear how many people see the death penalty as an issue to address and to abolish. So as Alessandro said, I grew up in Watts in the Jordan housing projects. and I participated in what many social justice activists call the longest running war in the history of this country, which is urban street gang wars, which in LA County alone for the past 25 years have claimed more than 18,000 lives. And it doesn't include those who have been permanently maimed or those who have been incarcerated for the rest of their life behind their participation. I mean, it's a serious, mental health epidemic. It's a serious epidemic that goes unaddressed in many cases because most of the perpetrators and the victims in these urban communities are African American and Latino. And the truth of the matter is that we still live in a pretty racist country, and we still have a lot of work to do on those particular issues. I came to the death penalty issue out of, as Alessandra said, a tragedy in my own life. After 16 years of working on the front line, 1992, myself and my brother and a group of friends, we were instrumental in creating the peace treaty in Watts between the Crips and the Bloods, that domino effect all across the city, and to change the quality of life in our neighborhood. Thank you. And let me say a little something about the legacy of that work before I talk about, the tragedy that happened to my son. The legacy of the peace treaty is that today, LA is experiencing a 40-year low in gang violence and murder. 10 consecutive years in a row of decreases in violent crimes and murder. 16.8% this year alone. 16.8%. And in my neighborhood, we've had a 50% decrease in violence, gang homicides, and murder in our neighborhood in the last year. Now, one of the questions that's being asked by government and law enforcement is, it was really hot this summer, the economy is messed up. They're like, why is violence still on a decline? When in these type of conditions, violence usually kind of spikes. Because the peace treaty created a culture in the community in which everybody engaged in the process of creating peace and resolving violence in the neighborhood. So this has become a culture that now exists and lives in the community. So after 16 years of working on the front line, creating various organizations that had tremendous amount of success, employing 80 staff, hiring intervention workers in all of the housing developments in Watts, traveling all across the country, sharing this message, my oldest son, Terrell, was graduating from high school. He was accepted on a football scholarship to Humboldt State University, the proudest day in my life. Taking my son to school, checking him into his classes, meeting his roommates. He came home on winter break, went to a party on the west side of LA, an affluent African-American neighborhood, and was shot to death at the party. Now, I'm no novice to murder and violence. I grew up in a violent environment. I've seen things that no kid should have to witness. But nothing ever prepares you for the loss of your child. And a lot of things could have happened because I'm pretty well respected in the neighborhood. The conditioned response in my community is not the death penalty, it's street justice. Somebody take one of yours, you take 1, 2, or 3 of theirs. So I had to go in the neighborhood and talk to a lot of the homies and tell them that going on a mission on behalf of Terrell wasn't his legacy. I'm like, we've been doing this work for 16 years in the neighborhood to save lives. And now that my son's life has been taken, I'm like, this is not a reason for us to create an all-out war or send some other parent through the pain that I'm suffering through right now. My son's murder is one of 1,000 murders that happen every year in the state of California. To date, 12,000 unsolved murders. And as Gloria said, 46% of the murders that happen in LA County go unsolved. My son's murder case is a cold case. No one has come forward to testify, no murder weapon, no closure. So one of the real reasons why I'm supporting Prop 34, abolishing this death penalty in the state of California, is because the death penalty is too expensive. It's ridiculous. The amount of money that we're spending on housing 724 individuals, $184 million a year. But yet, 80% of funds for gang intervention prevention services have been cut in the state of California. 90% in the federal government. So with all the successes that we're having, they're taking away the safety net, they're taking away the resources, and they're saying that we don't know where the money is? No, I know where the money is. It's in a broken system that's never been proven to decrease violent crimes and murder. This $100 million distribution to law enforcement agencies, and not all of it is going to the police. It's going to crime labs. It's going to better investigation. It's going to forensics. It's going to intervention prevention services. It's going to support victim services, helping families deal with the trauma of losing a loved one. That's why I support the ending of the death penalty in the state of California, because there's a much better way to strategically invest those resources so that we can make our communities safe.